Welcome to season 2 of Where Passion Meets Purpose. I'm your host, Jen Mentasana. Each week, I sit down with entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and trailblazers who share their raw, real stories of perseverance, resilience, and building a life and business with impact. We talk about everything from entrepreneurship and family to purpose and living fully. My goal is to inspire you to start that dream, push through the hard seasons, and wake up every single day ready to live the life you were born to live with passion and purpose. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Where Passion Meets Purpose. Thank you so much for being here. I have an amazing guest today. I say this every week. I have an amazing guest because I always do. So grateful to Angela Goodman for coming on the show. She just went through a huge move. And so the fact that she agreed to come on my show today in the middle of unpacking boxes and whatnot just means so much to me. So I'm so grateful. Angela is an amazing entrepreneur. She's a mom. She is CEO of Valkyrie Ventures Group, which is basically a financial firm that helps small and medium-sized businesses get their cash flow in order. She helps coach small and medium-sized businesses and entrepreneurs on their business operations. I personally have a restaurant business, so I just told her offline that I'm going to hire her to help with that because that's an area operations that we could use help in. She is a speaker. She has an amazing podcast called Evolve Through God, which we're going to talk about. And she is just one of those women who's doing it all. And the very first time I met you, Angela, it was online and it was through Jen Gottlieb's speaker. It was either Stage Leaders or Stage Leaders Studio. And you are an event booker. You do book speaking speakers. And I asked you a question because I had been torn and I'd been hearing so many people talk about how we shouldn't talk about God in our presentations, or we shouldn't talk about too many things that would make people feel uncomfortable in the audience. And so don't bring up Jesus or God or topics that maybe aren't like universal. And I asked you that question because my entire keynote is about how I found God and how I found my purpose through God. And you were so gracious. You said, listen, there are so many people out there who are looking for your message, who are looking for your voice, who need to hear this message. And if you don't talk about that and you don't put that in kind of your messaging to event bookers, you may be missing opportunities. And it was the first time that I really ever thought about it that way. And you just made me, I don't know, open up my mind, make me feel so much better about who I am, my message. And I'm just so grateful to you. And we've talked about getting each other on each other's show, and it's finally happening. So thank you so much for being here.
You are so welcome, Jen. And thank you for having me on. One of the things I love to talk about is how to find your passion and your purpose and do that for your entire life instead of getting a job, right? That just sort of fits the niche, because that's what I did for a lot of years. And it wasn't until I figured out what I was really passionate about that I created Valkyrie. And ever since then, I tell you, it's like when you're doing the Lord's work, right? You get called to do it. I mean, it's amazing how things take off and how great everything is. So I'm excited to be on the show today. Thank you for having me on.
Amazing. I mean, you are the quintessential ideal guest for me because you're someone who for a long time didn't really know what your passion or purpose was. You were chasing the dollar instead of the dream, as I like to call it, and really not necessarily in your passion and your purpose. You were doing it for the sake of financial security, all the things that we all do when we get out of college and think, I got to make money, I got to make money, I got to be successful, and not really tapping into our why that we're doing the thing other than making money. And so I think you were in engineering in corporate?
Yeah, I was in commercial HVAC.
Okay.
And similar too, like my parents were in sales, non-technical sales, and I got a degree in engineering, and they were like, you've got a great personality. Maybe you should go into some kind of technical sales. And again, I was following what someone else wanted for my life, and they weren't wrong. I mean, I loved the career that I had in sales. I loved helping people solve problems. I loved engineering solutions. So it made a lot of sense for me. And at the same time, what I didn't recognize was it was preparing me for what I would do later in life, which is help other small business owners to really understand their business and operations and cash flow so they could be successful.
So amazing. Okay, so tell us a little bit about like that pivotal time where you were chugging along in your career and then something kind of hit you that said it's time to make a change.
I had a couple of come to Jesus moments. That's what I like to call them. I knew God existed and didn't I wasn't really rooted in my faith until I was 38. So I was a little bit late to the game. I was never a churchgoer. I didn't attend church growing up. My parents were both raised Catholic, like very devout Catholic. So neither one of them wanted to take their kids to church. They just didn't want anything to do with the Catholic faith. And when I was 32, I had kind of the first come to Jesus moment. And I was working for Carrier Corporation at the time. I had a managerial role. I had been working for them since I'd graduated from college. So it had been about 10 years at that point. And actually had a near-death experience. I had my second daughter and I ended up with a blood clot in my ovarian vein. And I had better odds of winning the lottery than I did of having that particular blood clot happen. But it was during that time that God was really telling me to slow down, and I didn't realize it. When I was working in that role, I was up until the day before I gave birth, scaling ladders, 20 and 40-foot ladders to get to roofs to help people with their issues. And it was at that age that God said, whoo, you need to slow down, you need to stop. And I couldn't walk for about 2 months as I was healing from that clot. And so I thought that I needed just a transition, another career move where I wasn't in the field as much. So I took a role as a sales manager. So I had a team of salespeople beneath me, and I still wasn't happy. And what I didn't recognize at that time was I wasn't happy because I liked what I did, but it wasn't the reason I'm here. And so that was my first come to Jesus moment. And I didn't recognize it for what it was. And then when I was 38, I was actually running the DC and Baltimore operation for Carrier Commercial Service. And at the age of 38, I was looking around me, and I was one of the very few women at that level of leadership in the company. And I wasn't being paid the way the men were being paid in that same role. They kept telling me, oh, we're not going to pay you because you're young. You're young. You still have time. We don't want to pay you too much now because then we won't be able to pay you more later. It was the excuse. But there were men my age who were in a similar role making a lot more money than I was. And I had found out about that. And I feel like that was my second come to Jesus. Okay, Angela, these people are not taking you seriously as you should be. You're good at what you do, and they're not compensating you accordingly. Go work for yourself. Go bet on yourself. And so what I decided to do at that time, I started looking into some different business opportunities. I decided I wanted to go a franchise model route because I was afraid. I had a lot of fear around not being, not really knowing business well enough that I'd mess it up. And I'd been running a $25 million P&L for 5-6 years. But in my head, right, I had this imposter syndrome of where, I just didn't know what I didn't know. And so I decided to get into franchising at that point in time and quit my career. But I think it took me 3 or 4 years to figure that out. It didn't happen overnight. It was kind of, I was unhappy here. I was unhappy there. I was unhappy. And as I progressed up the ladder, there were things that bothered me. I always had this like little nagging tick in me that felt not right, but I didn't listen to it. And then finally, I decided to take the plunge, but it was like 3 or 4 years of back and forth hemming and hawing before I decided.
Well, I think, and when I was listening to your show and Matt, your partner, said something, asked you a question, and he said, well, it has to make sense in your head because you're a very analytical thinker. And so those of us who are analytical thinkers, we can kind of overanalyze situations and scenarios, and it isn't so easy to drop into our intuition to make decisions all the time. And so that was something that you were struggling in. And I talk about this a lot on the show and also in my book about, God will hit you over the head a couple times lightly, Now that first situation with having your daughter and not being able to walk and having that life-threatening decision was more than just a tap on the shoulder light. But you get these nudges throughout life, and God will not stop until you listen.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually going through another one of those right now. Oh, and I think it's funny because this is the last and final time. So when I went into franchising and I opened the restaurant 10 years ago, it was very painful. It was very painful to get it off the ground. It was very painful to get it making money. It was like God said, okay, this is what you want. I'm going to test you and see how bad you want it. And so the first 18 months, I lost a ton of money. I lost $500,000 or $600,000 in the first 18 months. I didn't have market education for that particular franchise. I was trying to run and operate the store, not really having a lot of experience in operating a restaurant operation. And then on top of that, I had, a challenge with my location as far as marketing was concerned. And so it was like God said, okay, I'm going to test you every 6 ways to Sunday. How bad do you want this? And after 18 months, we started to turn a profit. And about 6 months after that, COVID hit. So there was never kind of a way to get off of that hamster wheel. But what I will say is that I've learned, and for the first time in my life, I'm going through it right now, is that God assigns you to the work that you're meant to do. And unfortunately, in my prior 47 years of existence, I assigned to myself to the work I wanted to do. So when I was ready to leave the corporate hemisphere, I didn't sit back and allow myself space to figure out what my next step was supposed to be and what my next assignment was, what my first assignment was really, because I never allowed that before. So right now I'm on the precipice of releasing my restaurant business. I'm exiting it and selling it next month. And yes.
Congratulations, I should say.
I don't know if it's congratulations or not. It's like giving birth times 100. But that being said, I am transitioning the business next month. My original franchise agreement has hit its 10-year anniversary, and so it's time to move forward. But what I have learned in the last 10 years is now I get to surrender. Now I need to give it space and time. Now I need to just sit back and wait for my assignment, however long that takes. And that's a really scary thing.
Really?
I'm a control freak, girl. I don't know about you, but I am ready. Like, I will find something to do tomorrow. I will find something to do today. I will find something to do yesterday.
Totally. I just was having this conversation with someone the other day where it's like I was on the go train since March of last year. And then things have slowed down these last 2 weeks. And I'm like, don't know what to do with myself. You know what I mean? I'm like, wait, there's not something that I'm supposed to be planning for and getting done. And timing wise, it's good because the holidays are coming. I'm like, no, enjoy this time and you let go. But it is so much about that process of letting go and trusting that now that you know how this works and God will give you your assignment when the time comes, you will know what it is. But he's been preparing you for that next thing all the way up into this. And I look at you with this restaurant franchise 10 years, and we've been in business for 12, almost 13. And I know now, I understand why I needed to be a part of that with my husband, because it prepared me for the path that I'm on now. Yeah. And so, now looking back, we can always look back and see the breadcrumbs from behind. It's harder to see it going forward, right? But you now know everything leading up to this point has prepared you for this time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's given me a lot of peace. And also the move came at an amazing. So God really this year for me has required a complete disconnection from my prior life, if you will. So the restaurant is exiting. I sold my house. That was an 8-year, almost 9-year period of my life also that coincided with the restaurant. I also have essentially relinquished a lot of assets that I didn't have, like all of the things that were a part of Angela's cycle of control are coming to closure. And it's all happening at the same time, which is liberating, terrifying, and peaceful all at once. Because I recognize now, to your point, I'm on this precipice now, and this is where I'm meant to be. And so now I can kind of relax into it. The other thing I'll say too, especially for your listeners, is that as women who are high functioning business owners, even if we're stay-at-home moms who are constantly on the go and volunteering to help all of our organizations or our kids' schools or any of that, we're operating in our masculine energy most of the time, and we're not meant to be there. We are meant to be fully in connection with our intuition and be able to read what's going on from that and be in full connection with God in that way. And so that's another aspect of this that I've gotten the opportunity to learn in the last year or so. And that's been a tough one too.
I love that you're sharing that. And I would love to hear more about how you're doing that, because I think in this day and age, we as women have more opportunities to step into our masculine, and we're proving to ourselves that we can do a lot of things that men can do. There's been a shift in that societal expectation of women stay home with the kids. Now we're seeing more and more women are getting out there, dual incomes. I mean, especially I live in Southern California. I mean, you almost can't survive here without two incomes. But I was noticing that about myself, that I was starting to be the one, I am a nurturer, I am the, mom caretaker role, but I'm also the volunteer, and I'm also a business owner, and I'm also launching another business, and I'm in doing mode and masculine mode a lot. And I was finding that, especially in the dynamic with my relationship, I wasn't in my feminine enough. And so there's a fine line that we have to live as women to figure out how to step into our power and own that and still be in our feminine.
Well, what I'll say is this, and what I've learned in the last couple of years, our role as women is to nurture. It is to help and to assist. We can be leaders, we can be CEOs, we can own companies, we can have multiple companies and still be fully in our feminine energy. We have to impart what needs to be given to the staff and the team around us and teach them how to do their roles. So if we've got incredible, amazing men that are providers and doers and go-getters that are on our team, then it's our job as their leader to nurture them to be their best. And then that way we're leading from a feminine instead of leading from a very masculine, go do all the tasks ourselves type of environment. That's one of the things that I love when I talk to female leaders to talk to them about, because for many years, I was on top of people. If they didn't get things done, if it didn't happen exactly the way I thought it needed to happen, if it was not completely structured the way I thought it needed to be, I was on top of them. And that was operating as a masculine leader. As a feminine leader, it's our job to coach, train, and nurture them so that they learn and they can go do it for themselves. And that's the difference between leading from your feminine and leading from your masculine.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's so funny because I look back at my corporate career and I think about the bosses that I had. I was in sales as well in the media business. While most of my bosses were men, and I tended to get along with men better when they were my direct report, because they weren't threatened or they didn't have this feminine prove it dynamic going on. That was such a different time in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s in corporate America. But I always look back now and I think about if I had a feminine leader that empowered me in that way, what a difference my career would have been. I mean, what a difference. So much of my career, and that I look back on, it was the dynamic internally, not the actual job I was doing, but the corporate dynamic of working for either old boys club mentality or hardcore masculine feminine leaders. Right. And it was such a time that women were still proving themselves as leaders, and they felt like they had to be more masculine than even the masculine leaders in their company. Yeah. And so it's such a fascinating thing. And I love this shift of teaching feminine and women leaders to be more feminine in the way they lead. I love that so much. Like, I feel like you could teach, I'm sure there are workshops all over the place, but such a powerful thing to do in today's corporate society. Love that so much. So I want to talk a little bit about your podcast. I want to talk a little bit about this, this kind of, I won't call it an awakening, but we all do at some point have an awakening if we're fortunate to have an awakening and open up our relationship with God beyond religion, beyond tradition, beyond what we're told in society is be a good girl, be quiet, be whatever. What was that like for you? Because I know you didn't grow up with any sort of relationship with God, but bring us back to that pivotal time when God really became a part of your life.
So when I was, in 2021, actually the end of 2020. 2020 was a tough year for me. Obviously, COVID with the restaurant, complete business model shift. My dad in February got a really advanced stage of pancreatitis and was in a coma for about 2 months. And I was the executor on his estate at that time. So COVID's hitting. I'm taking care of my dad in the hospital at Shock Trauma in Maryland. every single day. I'm, doing the executorship on all of his estate stuff while he's completely, we don't know if he's going to live or die from one way to the next. So 2020 was a very, very difficult year for me. Toward the end of the year, I found Ed Milet and Andy Frisella.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
Ed Milet, when you mentioned that in one of your shows, I was like, okay, this girl, I'm such a fan too. Yeah.
Oh, no. And I love him. He's amazing. Like for those of you that have seen him, listen to him, he's just as incredible as you would imagine in person. He's an incredible human being. So I found them at the end of 2020 and I joined the RTA Syndicate, which is their entrepreneurship group, in the beginning of 2021. So it's a group for entrepreneurship and it's faith-based. It's very obviously being Ed is extremely faith-based. And so it is faith-based. So a lot of the members in that group, there's about 1,200 of them now. A lot of members in the group are extremely faith-based. And at that time, I was kind of in this, I'd just seen my dad go through all this stuff. He made it. He was in the hospital for 11 months, but I mean, he made it and he came to live with me. And so I got to watch God go to work for him, if you will. And so that really became probably the most pivotal part of my growth and consciousness. And then when I got involved in Arate, it was like God kept putting people in front of me who were going to talk about him and who were talking about Jesus and who were challenging me on my beliefs. And at that point in time, I had not read the Bible ever in my life. I hadn't done any of that work. And it kept getting put in front of me, And so finally I said, good Lord, I give up. Okay, fine. I'm going to start this
over their head again.
Yes. So in 2021, I started that process. I went in 22 to a summit for the RTA Syndicate, which is a smaller subset groups, like 120 people were there. And I met a ton of people who became very close friends of mine. And a lot of them are very deeply rooted in their faith. And so they were questioning me on stuff. So I started doing that work. And then I went to another summit the following year in 2023. And about 3 days before the summit, I get a phone call from Emily Frisella. And she says, we want you to lead the prayer on the first dinner night before dinner. And I was in a state of shock because at this point in time, I'd been doing a lot of that work, but nobody really knew that. I mean, nobody knew I was doing that work on my own. I was kind of embarrassed to talk to my friends who were very faith-based about the questions I had because I just felt like they were stupid. And so I was really, really surprised. And I had that was November of 23. I'd met Matt 2 months prior to that. And he is very faith driven. He grew up in the Lutheran Church, went to Friends University, which is a Christian school for college and singing. And whatever questions I had, I could ask him. And he helped me prep for that prayer for that dinner. And I would say those 2 months after I met him, between the time I did that prayer, were like even more. It's like exponential cataclysm of, okay, here we go. You're gonna just do all the learning and your faith is gonna grow. And then in the last year, so I started the podcast last December, and I did it because I was called to do it after hosting a spiritual gifts retreat last October. And then after I got done with that, it was like God said, okay, go get my story out there. You need to educate people on the relationship that's not religious, right? So the relationship we have with God, independent of our religion. And so that was why I started the podcast last year. And this year has been one of the most challenging of my life. As I said, I've been called to get rid of literally everything. And so my faith has just grown so much, just watching kind of God go to work in so many aspects of my life.
I think you're such a great example of someone who grew up not having a faith, actually questioning whether or not God was real.
Oh, yeah. The Bible. Oh, the Bible's just a book. Like somebody wrote that. That didn't actually really happen.
Right, exactly. And it's like, for those of us who didn't have a ton of like, this is what it is, it just, you were like, okay, that's something weird over here that's not part of my life. But what I love is that you were open to allowing yourself to receive and the messages, the connection. kind of moving forward in the way that it happened, and now are an example of someone who starts a podcast talking about God when you were someone who didn't believe at all. And it's just such a powerful thing. I think in this day and age, like you, so many people, religion was shoved down their throat. My husband grew up Catholic, shoved down his throat, guilt, Catholicism, like all of that stuff. So he kind of shunned it now. And it's like, that is not the way that we open up dialogue about how to talk about faith. And so now we're all turning this corner of saying, okay, what does it mean to have a relationship with God? And how can I start to have a relationship with God? It doesn't have to be going to a church. And I think
no, and in most cases it really has. So I've been reading, I'm almost finished with the third book, the Conversations with God series, which was written by Neil Donald Walsh. He's supposedly went into meditation in a very hard part of his life and had these internal dialogues with what he frames as God. The books are very powerful to get you to think about God outside of religion, and the construct of religion and how it's become this prison, if you will, for the guilt, for the shame, for, you won't be accepted into heaven, all of those things. If you do one thing. Yeah, exactly. I mean, look at the Puritan religion. That's a primary example. The Puritan religion, they used to do all kind of things to you if you didn't do every single thing they had. And I don't know about you, but my God is a loving God and wouldn't provide guilt, shame, and punishment for anything I did. Right. So it's been a beautiful journey to kind of figure that out. But those books I would recommend to anybody who wants to see a non-traditional religious viewpoint of who God is and what he brings to our lives.
That I will definitely put those books in the show notes, as well as your podcast. I know we have to wrap up because you've got a hard stop, and I feel like we could go on and on. I want to definitely have you back on the show to talk about this period when you've come through on the other side of whatever it is you're going to do next. I want to have you back on to talk about that because I know our audience will be curious, and this is kind of like we get to have a front row seat in real time what this transition is going to be for you. I'm sure you'll still keep your Valkyrie Ventures.
I'm very passionate about helping small business owners, especially those in hospitality, because it is so hard to make a living and stay in business in that industry. I will always have that. That will always be a part of what I do. I'm excited to see what God does with my life as we go forward. So I will definitely come back on and give you guys an update. For sure.
Yeah, we need that. And we will make sure that all the ways to follow you, contact you, your website, social media, all that good stuff, and the books you reference all in the show notes. And I just can't thank you enough, Angela, for being here. I can't wait to see what this next chapter unfolds for you. And I hope we get to connect and talk soon.
Oh, yeah, let's do it. Let's schedule.
Thank you so much for being here. And thank you all for watching and listening. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And we will see you next week. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you found this episode beneficial. And if you feel compelled to do so, share it with a friend who might benefit too. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Reach out to me anytime on my website at jenmentasana.com.